This is Sean, and today I'd like to go over some rather interesting topics. And today's topic is the role of women in Hmong culture. In particular, we're going to go over the myth of Niam Nkauj Ntsuab and Doshina, essentially. Doshina is more on the side. He's not as important as Niam Nkauj Ntsuab, but if you have already watched my previous video, I've touched base on this a little in the past. But say proto-Hmong people, the people that eventually will become the Hmong, and not just Hmong, maybe even Mian and all these other closely related groups. We came from a superstitious culture from early in East Asia. It's likely one that was at the mercy of the weather, that they needed to worship the heavens for, or any gods or goddesses that they believe may promote fertility, in particular, more in the agricultural sense that the harvest will be fine, and that's why our New Year, our time, so that once we complete the harvest, hopefully everything is fine and right, and then sacrifice to ensure the continuation of the harvest and ultimately our people. Then, and women were likely our medium or representation of that fertility, as we've gone in past. I've explained in past video, and those, and they likely would lead these rituals to ensure the successful harvest, or hopefully they will become successful. And if not, they might have the answers to the questions that men would have. So let's break down the story of Niam Nkauj Ntsuab and Doshina. This is the incest twins. So the brother and the sister were the only beings. I believe some story the brother might have been born maybe 3 months earlier, 3 hours, something slightly earlier than the sister. The only way to populate, it was only those two, so the only way to populate this lonely world was through the sister, the woman. However, the sister would not marry her brother because obviously it's incest. She has, the story kind of promote that she already has a moral understanding, but her brother also has his moral understanding in trying to repopulate this world for these lonely twins. So she is in charge of their fate and of humanity. So she agreed to only marry her brother if the heavens will so. And to do so, they kind of had a gamble. Again, they might have had more than just one gamble. The stories differ from people to people, and not just people, family to family as well. So that's why I'm not. I can't tell the full story because I may only see the story from my point of view. But there might be other families out there, or other people, or other Hmong groups who have a slightly different story than. So both of them climb to their respective mountains. Her mountain is the higher mountain. It's a representation of her status, or the status of woman. She as a woman. And at that time, we worship kind of the mountains. The higher the mountains, the more important it is. And then we get to the brother's mountain, and it's not a mountain as high as her. It's a smaller mountain. The mountain top is not as tall. So, from a perspective of the mountains, he is not as valued as her. And each rolled their stone, and if her stone laid on top of his, she would win, and the two would not marry. And vice versa. If his was on top of hers, it would be because the heavens wanted it so, and so she would marry him. So it's a form of divination. And, well, she was on the higher mountain. Her rock landed on top of his because his got to the mountain first, and then hers landed on top. So divine intervention, or even birthright as a woman, it gave her an unfair advantage. But being a man, and men, they are sly people, always plotting, always scheming. As his mountain was a smaller mountain, he was able to get down the mountain first, and by doing so, he cheated fate. He flipped the rocks over. He put his rock on top of hers before she was able to get down from her mountain. So, with the proof as is, she kept her words and took the brother as her husband. So in this story, Niam Nkauj Ntsuab was of a higher standing and was the source of fertility for the future of the world. Doshina is the person who was or has to get the approval of Niam Nkauj Ntsuab in the heaven. So he has to get the approval of her, and it's likely because she acted as the medium. between, or the bridge between the heavens and the earth, seen as her mountain is the higher mountain. So he couldn't have, or rather, it wasn't in his fate. So he wasn't destined to marry her. So he cheated destiny. He cheated the heaven. He ends up cursing. In a way, he ends up cursing his child, or it may just be a forerunner warning against incest, that their child was born either as a egg or as a lump or piece of meat. Where Hmong believe they cut it and threw it, and it'll populate the world wherever it landed, whether it's in the gate or the lava or whatnot. Then so that's just a short story of that. We know that human sacrifice was practiced in early East Asian history, so the egg or the meat would have been a sacrifice to the heavens in return for the land to become fertile. And it might be also a sacrifice because of his transgression, because he cheated the birthright of, or the will of the heaven, that he cheated when he flipped the stone over. So this story is similar in relations to, say, the Chinese incest twin themselves, brother and sister, Nuwa and Fuxi. In older times, Fuxi would be similar to Peishi or Baoxi, or as the Fu would denote be something close to our word for kneeling or prostrating or showing weakness, or as we call it, tawepe. And Chinese, they I believe they really use that word. I believe they use the word kowtow now. We don't use that word because likely at that time we left China when we still use the word for bei instead of kowtow. And then his name Shi, it's a symbol that contains the pictograph for Ya, the goat, and the symbol for the self. So, and it's also a play on word. Being the Ya, it could also mean daytime as well. And it may just be a reflection of, say, when the patriarchy overcame the initial matriarchy, essentially. I believe the way it was sorted out it might have ended that way then. So he was, they might have explained it as that he was a shepherd, denoting the goat in his symbol in his name, the Ya in his name, or a king, divine king in that case, or a sun deity, but a lot of times he's also known as a water god again. And so with Fushi's name explained, let's get to Nuwa. Nuwa, again, is the more important one. It's equivalent to our word for Niam Nkauj, because Nuwa, I believe, in the older days would be more pronounced more like Nuagua, and the Nia is for lady or goddess, and the Gao is for beauty. But Gao is also a play on word for, back in those days, maybe the root word for snail or for spiral, and her depiction in some of these older art do show that her and Fuxi are in a helical bond, a spiral-like bond. Think of it like a DNA strand, as two snakes intertwining, both likely worshipped as a water goddess because they are symbolizing as snake. But again, she could also have been symbolized as a frog, because frogs are important back in ancient Asia. Coincidentally, they say Nuwa might have created the world, but we also have a story of a frog as well in Blonglu. But that story itself, we'll get to that in a bit. But for now, Nuwa again is either worshipped as a sun or a sky goddess. Once she mended the heaven, she was able to fix the heaven. We'll go over some more of that, how the heaven was broken, in a later video. And it's a fun fact that from the Chinese perspective, the Xing, or to Hmong people, Luqing, the reed instrument, or its origin by the Chinese, that was created by Nuwa. So for Chinese people, the Luqing is created by Nuwa. Now, the frog origin, it shares a lot in relations to Blonglu, the frog who we might have, in some stories, say created the world. His name roughly translates to leaf dew, or droplet, or page residue, because we use Blong for pages as well. And pages might not just be for a book; it could be for, you say, your destiny, a scroll, or whatnot. So we consider the frog as the one who built the world, similar to the story of how Nuwa built the world, or populated the world. Then, And for all we know, Blue the frog, we might see him as a guy, but for all we know, he could also be a goddess of fertility that goes hand in hand with creating life. Then, if we go further back in time, again, we don't quite know for sure, but yeah, frogs were found a lot in archaeology, in, in the in the history as well as say sometimes you might even come across those what do they call those earthquake detectors and like back in China those old frogs that would drop something if they sense a little earthquake going on. So that's the importance of frogs then, or at least just a glimpse of that. There might be more importance to the frog in ancient Far East Asia. So we'll go over that once we know more about that. Then, now the reason why Nua is important is it's a quick side note on marriage. So Nua took her brother as her husband. Hmong marriage in the older days likely was between one man and one woman, because we don't hear stories of Fuxi pulling a Zeus or Doshina pulling a Zeus on other women or goddess. We don't hear that until, say, a later story of, say, of Nushilong and and whatnot, or Jua and, say, the Jua and Huatai and Saigo and Zaya. So that's down the line then. Now, back then, obviously, marriage is a expensive concept, and obviously, one man couldn't be able to afford multiple wives because he could barely afford his own. So, and the reason why is because women are valued more. So that's why we have the bride price. Because for that, we're taking the bride from her family. She is valued more. She adds more to the family. Then she's not just extra. She's not. We don't view them as extra mouth to feed. We view them as a part of the family that they contribute and allow this family to expand. Say they raise children. They also help out on the farm. They create. As a side note, men hunt, and then women create stuff. So all we know how to do is to take lives away. So that's why hunting is so important to Hmong, because we don't understand the concept that we're taking lives away. So it's a yin and yang concept. As women bring life, they raise life. If it's not their children, they look over things, while for us men, we don't bring that much in. And this is not true for just Hmong. It's true for elsewhere as well. Then. Even back in the foraging and gathering time as well. Then. So there's always a reason why every story is told. And obviously, Ningojua on top of her mountain is the tallest one. Doshina is on his little mountain, and it's always harmony between the two. This trend, again, follow closely to Njua and Hotai or Hotai Tsai either. Again, these stories are, a lot of them are retelling, slightly changed, and at the end they all became their own different story. So again, this is just the tip of the iceberg for women in Hmong mythology, and it's likely, again, mythology are sometimes grounded in some truth, and these are likely predated the Hmong culture. In those early times, women were equal, if not valued more than men. And it all comes back to men being at the whims of the heavens or at the mercy of the weather. There's a lot I left out, and obviously I would love to go over those topics some other day, especially more on the role of women in early proto-Hmong culture. And also, there's one topic I might go over in the future, and that involves more of human sacrifice, and probably to know more, not just in the Hmong aspect, but in the early East Asian culture of how human sacrifice played a role. And even to this day, there's some aspect of human sacrifice in the Hmong culture. So I'll love to go over that. Again, like, share, and tag whoever you think might be interested in this or might want to have questions for me or contribute to my knowledge, because I'm learning every day. I'm wanting to learn from people who know more. Because, again, I'm not anything special in the Hmong community. I don't know anything about Hmong, just the basic, and I'm applying this to, say, cultures that I find interesting from throughout the world. So I'm looking at this through maybe from the eyes outside of the Hmong culture at what I'm seeing then. So again, I do apologize if there's any misconception, but I do want to go over again this history and and more on that and applying this to what I do know. And obviously history is always changing, and so is this. And so again, like, share, tag anyone you might might have interest in this, or might want to add to or contribute to me learning more about the Hmong culture. Then, and thank you all. Have a great day.